The Kansas City Chiefs are set to face off against the Buffalo Bills in the AFC Championship, and it's shaping up to be a matchup for the history books. In this video, I'll be diving into their past meetings, including the Chiefs' loss earlier this season, and I'll explain why I believe Kansas City will come out on top this time. We'll also take a look at a few key areas where the Chiefs may have an edge over the Bills, which could be crucial in determining the winner. As we all know, this isn't the first time these two teams have clashed in the postseason. This will mark the fourth meeting between the Chiefs and Bills during the Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen era. The Chiefs have won all three previous matchups, and I'm really excited for this game. For the Chiefs to reach the Super Bowl, they'll have to go through the one team that beat them earlier this season, the Buffalo Bills, one of the best teams in the NFL. Yes, the Chiefs did lose to the Broncos in Week 18, but that was mainly due to them resting their key starters, so it's not as concerning. Now, after the Chiefs took care of business by beating the Texans, we saw the Bills beat the Ravens in a thrilling game that kept fans on the edge of their seats. I'm sure many of you, like me, were able to watch that game without too much stress, knowing that the Chiefs had already won. It was a wild ride, with the Ravens making a comeback after two early turnovers helped the Bills take a 21-10 lead. But the Ravens weren't done yet. They scored 9 unanswered points to tie things up, only for Buffalo to pull away with 2 field goals following another Ravens turnover. With less than 4 minutes remaining, Lamar Jackson led the Ravens on a strong 88-yard touchdown drive, bringing them within 2 points. Unfortunately, they couldn't convert on the 2-point try after Mark Andrews dropped the ball, and that sealed the deal for the Bills. Now that you've got the recap, let's dive into why I think the Chiefs have what it takes to win this one. Even if the Ravens had managed to convert that 2-point conversion and tie the game, the Bills still had a minute and a half left on the clock and 2 timeouts. With Josh Allen at the helm, it's possible the Bills could have driven into field goal range and won the game anyway. This game stood out to me because, honestly, the Ravens seemed like the better team for stretches of it, but the Bills executed better and made fewer mistakes. That's been a key to the Chiefs' success as well. It's not that Buffalo didn't play well, but the Ravens committed 3 turnovers and still nearly tied the game at the end. If Baltimore had avoided those turnovers, they probably would have come out on top. Lamar Jackson threw a bad interception, and on the very next drive, he fumbled, allowing Buffalo to recover and turn it into a touchdown. In the third quarter, Mark Andrews fumbled, and he also dropped a crucial 2-point conversion pass from Lamar. Those were costly mistakes. In the playoffs, especially against a team as solid as the Bills, you can't afford to make those kinds of errors. It's win or go home, and you have to play a clean game to have a chance. Looking ahead, the AFC Championship game between the Bills and Chiefs is set for Sunday evening. The winner of that game will face the winner of the NFC Championship between the Commanders and Eagles in Super Bowl 59. The Chiefs and Bills have met in the conference championship before, in 2021, where Kansas City came out on top with a 38-24 victory. Their most dramatic playoff meeting came the following year, in the 2022 divisional round, in what became known as the 13-second game. The Bills had taken a 36-33 lead with just 13 seconds left, but the Chiefs, led by Patrick Mahomes, needed only 2 plays to get into field goal range, setting up a 49-yard kick to tie the game and send it into overtime. In overtime, the Chiefs won the coin toss and scored a touchdown on their opening drive, with Travis Kelce catching the game winner. That meant Josh Allen never even got a chance to touch the ball in overtime, much like Mahomes had experienced in a previous AFC Championship against Tom Brady and the Patriots. Since that game, however, the overtime rules in the playoffs have changed. Now, if the first team to score a touchdown in overtime wins, the other team still gets a chance to match it with their own touchdown drive. If the game goes into overtime and the first team to score a touchdown doesn't allow the other team to match it with a touchdown of their own, the game ends right there. But if the opposing team can score a touchdown on their own drive, the next score wins, no matter who it comes from. The most recent playoff matchup between the Chiefs and Bills took place last year in Buffalo, when Mahomes and the Chiefs played their first ever road playoff game. Kansas City had the chance to go up by 10 points in the fourth quarter, but disaster struck when Mecole Hardman fumbled on a first-and-goal jet sweep. The fumble resulted in a touchback, giving the Bills the ball at the 20-yard line and keeping the game close, down by just 3 points. A few drives later, the Bills had the chance to tie things up, but kicker Tyler Bass missed a 44-yard attempt wide right, and the Bills ultimately lost. That game, however, is in the past. Both of these teams have changed, and none of that history matters now. What's important now are the injuries on both sides, particularly from the Bills' most recent game. These injuries could shift the odds in favor of the Chiefs' offense in the upcoming matchup. But before we dive into that, let's look back at the last time these two teams met in the regular season. When the Chiefs and Bills faced off earlier this season, Buffalo handed Kansas City their only loss of the regular season, aside from the Broncos game. In the week leading up to that matchup, the Chiefs faced a few setbacks. Kicker Harrison Butker suffered a knee injury during practice, and Spencer Shadler had to step in and make all three of his extra points. Wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster returned after missing several weeks due to a hamstring injury, while wide receiver Hollywood Brown and cornerback Jalen Watson were still on injured reserve. Defensive end Charles Omenihu and running back Isaiah Pacheco had their 21-day window to return from injured reserve opened, but neither was able to play against the Bills. Meanwhile, DeAndre Hopkins was playing in his fourth game with the Chiefs, still getting acclimated to the offense. The Bills were dealing with injuries of their own. They were missing starting right tackle Spencer Brown, along with two key pass catchers, wide receiver Keon Coleman, who was dealing with a wrist injury, and tight end Dalton Kincaid, who was out with a knee injury. They were also missing linebackers Matt Milano and Baylon Spector, who were both on injured reserve. With those key players returning for the Chiefs and Bills, it's clear that both teams are in a different place now compared to when they last played each other in November. Now let's dive into some of the changes and favorable matchups for the Chiefs heading into this Sunday's game. Let's take a closer look at that Week 11 game between the Chiefs and Bills, which was a wild one. Early on, Mahomes threw an interception on 2nd and 3, trying to force a pass to Noah Gray. That turnover led to a rushing touchdown for James Cook, giving the Bills an early lead. Josh Allen also had his own costly interception in the first half. On a 4th down, he threw a pick to Shamari Connor, which turned into a touchdown for Noah Gray. So, both quarterbacks threw turnovers in the first half, which turned into points for the other team. Xavier Worthy started to heat up in this game, catching 4 passes, including a touchdown on one drive in the first quarter. But after a deep shot from Mahomes to Worthy in the second quarter, where Worthy couldn't stay in bounds, he was never targeted again for the rest of the game. At the start of the second half, the Bills were leading 16-14. After 4 consecutive punts, both teams traded touchdowns, with the third one essentially putting the game out of reach. The Bills were up by just 2 points, sitting at the Chiefs' 26-yard line with just over 2 minutes remaining and facing a crucial 4th and 2. Instead of kicking a field goal to go up by 5, they made the bold decision to go for it, hoping to keep Mahomes from getting a chance to lead another game-winning drive. On that play, the Chiefs surprised the Bills by playing zone coverage, while Buffalo called a man coverage beater. But for some reason, the Chiefs didn't have a spy on Josh Allen, and he used his legs to make a play that seemed inevitable. He scrambled into the end zone, putting the Bills up by 9 points and essentially sealing the game. Mahomes threw an interception on the next drive while trying to make a desperate pass to Travis Kelce on 4th and 13, and that was the end of it. The Bills got the win. The Bills were successful on 3rd down, going 9 for 15, and converted one of 2 4th downs, including Allen's crucial rushing touchdown late in the game. The Chiefs, on the other hand, were just 5 for 10 on 3rd down and didn't convert their lone 4th down attempt. Despite that, Kansas City did have one more possession. The Bills also dominated time of possession, holding the ball for nearly 9 minutes longer than the Chiefs. The Chiefs were perfect in the red zone, going 3 for 3, but the Bills weren't far behind, going 3 for 4, all of which were rushing touchdowns. Despite the loss, the Chiefs' defense was solid for most of the game. The Chiefs' defense had some strong moments in Week 11, especially against the run, limiting James Cook to just 20 yards on 9 carries. However, all 3 of the Bills' touchdowns came on the ground, and Josh Allen was their leading rusher, finishing with 12 carries for 55 yards. Notably, 26 of those yards came on his 4th and 2 touchdown run, which helped seal the game. While the Chiefs' defense did a good job against the run, most of the Bills' success came through the air, where they targeted the Chiefs' secondary. Trent McDuffie had a solid game, allowing only 1 reception for 1 yard. However, other players in the secondary struggled. Justin Reid gave up 4 catches on 4 targets for 34 yards, and Nick Bolton allowed 4 catches on 5 targets for 20 yards. Jamari Connor allowed 5 receptions on 6 targets for 55 yards, but he did snag an interception. Despite the pick, Connor missed a few tackles. Nazeeh Johnson allowed 9 catches on 12 targets for 103 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs' defense also failed to sack Allen even once and allowed him to complete 27 of 40 passes for 262 yards and 1 touchdown, including a bizarre interception that still leaves fans scratching their heads. One of the key issues for the Chiefs was their inability to stop third and long situations. They allowed 6 different third and long conversions, including a 3rd and 6 for 30 yards, a 3rd and 14 for 15 yards, a 3rd and 8 for 15 yards, a 3rd and 9 for 10 yards, and 2 more 3rd and long conversions due to defensive penalties. This was the first time since Super Bowl 57 that the Chiefs' defense had given up 30 points in a game. The Bills played a great overall game, but these are issues the Chiefs will need to fix going forward. Now, as they prepare for the next matchup, the Chiefs have Charles Omenihu back on the defensive line, which should help strengthen their pass rush and hopefully allow them to pressure Josh Allen more effectively. More importantly, cornerback Jalen Watson is back in the secondary. His return is huge and should provide a major boost against the Bills' passing game, which gave the Chiefs' secondary a lot of trouble in Week 11. On the other side, Allen will have some key players returning as well. Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, and their starting right tackle will all be back for this game. However, neither Kincaid nor Coleman made a huge impact in the Bills' recent game against the Ravens. The main targets for Allen lately have been Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. So while the Bills are getting healthier, it's worth noting that their offensive threats haven't been the same as earlier in the season. When comparing the returns on both sides of the ball, the Chiefs' defense should be in a much stronger position this time around. Flipping to the other side of the ball, the Bills' defense faced some challenges last time against the Chiefs. They were missing linebackers Matt Milano and Baylon Spector, but despite that, they managed to do a great job limiting Travis Kelce. He finished the game with just 2 catches for 8 yards, and linebacker Terrell Bernard was particularly effective against him. The Bills' defensive game plan focused on shutting Kelce down, and they were successful in that regard. However, watching Kelce rack up 7 catches for 117 yards in the divisional round probably means Buffalo will again make him a key focus in their game plan this time around. Outside of Kelce, the Chiefs' other contributors in Week 11 included Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Watson, and Noah Gray, who caught 2 of the team's 3 touchdowns. But when it comes to Kelce, it's important to note that he's been a completely different player in the playoffs against Buffalo. In the 3 playoff games he's played against them during the Mahomes and Allen era, Kelce has averaged 8.7 catches for 96.3 yards and 1.7 touchdowns per game. On top of that, Kelce has now had 14 straight playoff games with 70 or more receiving yards, so the Bills will need to prepare for a serious challenge if they're going to contain him once again. Now, let's say the Bills manage to shut down Kelce, especially with Milano back in the mix and Bernard continuing his solid play from Week 11. That's where I think the Chiefs have a significant advantage in this game, and it lies with their wide receiver group. DeAndre Hopkins is now fully integrated into the offense, and Xavier Worthy has continued to grow into a more prominent role, averaging about 5 catches for 50 yards per game since the last meeting with Buffalo. On top of that, Hollywood Brown is back in the lineup, which is something the Chiefs didn't have in Week 11. Things get even more interesting because the Bills' secondary is a bit banged up after their win over the Ravens in the divisional round. Safety Taron Johnson injured his shoulder, and while he's expected to play, he might be limited or wearing a brace. Meanwhile, safety Taylor W.P. hurt his hip and had to leave the game on a cart. His status is day-to-day, so it's unclear whether he'll play in the upcoming game. To make matters worse, cornerback Christian Benford is currently in concussion protocol, though there's a chance he could clear it in time for Sunday's game. If these key players are limited or unavailable, it could create significant opportunities for the Chiefs' passing attack. It's still unclear whether the injured players for the Bills will be able to play, but we do know that the Chiefs have a clear advantage in the wide receiver matchup. The Bills' secondary has been dealing with several injuries, and this could make all the difference in the game. Plus, let's not forget how dominant Patrick Mahomes has been in conference championship games. Aside from a tough second half against the Bengals, where he threw his only 2 picks in an AFC championship, Mahomes has been exceptional. He holds a 4-2 record in these games, with an average of over 300 total yards, 2.5 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 119.8. On top of that, the Chiefs are getting some key players back, including Joe Thuney at left tackle, Jalen Watson in the secondary, and they're playing at home in Arrowhead, which is always a huge advantage in the playoffs. Given all this, the Chiefs certainly have a strong chance of winning, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win by more than one score, though it's never been easy when these two teams meet. Every time we think the Chiefs could pull off a more decisive win, it ends up coming down to the wire with just 1, 2, or 3 points. However, beating the Bills for the fourth time in a row in the playoffs is no small task. In fact, it's never been done before. No quarterback has ever beaten another quarterback 4 straight times in the playoffs. And when these two teams meet, it's almost always a close game. In fact, over the last 10 games between the Chiefs and the Bills, they've both scored and allowed exactly 251 points. It's an unbelievable stat, but it shows just how closely matched these teams are. It's basically a coin flip every time they play. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game. How are you feeling about the Chiefs' chances, especially with the Bills' secondary banged up? Do you think the Chiefs will be able to take advantage of their wide receiver room with the return of Hollywood Brown? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.